Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to cover the drug therapy of gout and migraine. So first of all, we'll see about drug therapy of gout. So what is gout? That we will see first of all. It's a metabolic disorder characterized by hyperuricemia. Uric acid, a product of purine metabolism, has low water solubility, especially at low pH. When blood urate levels are high, it precipitates and deposits in joints, kidney and subcutaneous tissue. So this deposition is known as tophi. So this tophi is chalk-like structure and gets deposited over these places. So this gout is characterized by hyperuricemia that we know, primary hyperuricemia and secondary hyperuricemia. Primary hyperuricemia, the same thing happened as we have described earlier. Precipitates and deposits in joints, kidney and subcutaneous tissue. That is because of endogenous mechanism. Secondary hyperuricemia, that is because of some secondary reason like excessive production or decreased excretion. That may be because of drug induced also. So which are the drugs which can lead to hyperuricemia? Thiazide, furosemide. These two are diuretics and they increase the blood level of uric acid and causing hyperuricemia. Pyrazinamide, that is first line anti-TB agent. Ethambutol, also first line anti-TB agent. Levodopa is anti-Parkinsonian agent. So these all drugs will lead to hyperuricemia and gout, that is known as secondary hyperuricemia. Drug classification, which are the drugs useful for gout? In pathogenesis or whatever the aspect that will be covered along with drugs regarding gout. But depends on types of gout. Like duration wise, if we'll see acute gout and chronic gout. Acute gout, that means acute attack of gout and chronic gout. So in acute attack of gout, there is the joint inflammation, synovial proliferation, activation of lysosomal enzymes, that is glycoprotein, ultimately mediated by glycoprotein. So these inflammatory events occur and patient feels intense pain and the signs of inflammation that you already know. So if we go drug wise, the drugs used for acute attack of gout, we need to cover the inflammatory portion rather than secretion and excretion of uric acid. So that is more important in case of chronic gout. So acute attack, we need to use the drugs which will take care of inflammation. So NSAIDs, the drugs are NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, colchicine, corticosteroids. One by one, in very brief, we will see about each and every agent. For chronic gout or chronic hyperuricemia, so two categories of drugs are used here. The one category is known as uricosuric agents. So that will increase the urinary excretion of uric acid and thereby decreasing the level of uric acid in the blood. Another class is uric acid synthesis inhibitor. So they inhibit the synthesis of uric acid by inhibiting various enzymes at different level. So uricosuric agents, which are the uricosuric agents? In general pharmacology also you have learned in urinary excretion about the organic and ionic transporter or organic acid transporters. So these agents are probenecid and sulfenpyrazone. Synthesis inhibitors are allopurinol and febuxostat. Along with that, another antibody, monoclonal antibody is also given. That is known as pegloticase, that we will see. In case of acute gout, NSAID, what is the role of NSAIDs? NSAIDs, we are knowing, they are potent anti-inflammatory agents as well as analgesic action is also there. So which are the agents having potent anti-inflammatory action? Naproxen, piroxicam, diclofenac, indomethacin or etoricoxib. So these are basically non-selective agent. If we talk about etoricoxib, it belongs to coxibs or selective COX-2 inhibitors. So we are not going into detail about the COX-1, COX-2 and already covered. But it will take 12 to 24 hours to get relief. What is the mechanism of these NSAIDs here? In case of acute attack, it inhibits chemotactic migration of leukocytes into the inflamed joint. Lower doses are given or can be given for 3 to 4 weeks after that or after the acute attack. But nowadays, if we discuss the status of NSAIDs in case of acute attack of gout, they are the first choice agent or agent of choice because of less toxicity as compared to other agents used in acute attack of gout. Which are the other agents? Corticosteroids and colchicine. So NSAIDs are preferable in case of acute attack of gout. Colchicine more effective and faster acting than NSAIDs. Then also I told you NSAIDs are mainly preferable. Why? Because of adverse effect or toxicity of colchicine. Colchicine, by which mechanism it acts? It suppresses gouty inflammation by inhibiting glycoprotein, the action on glycoproteins. Now we'll see what is the usual role of glycoprotein in inflammation. So first of all, it increasing lactic acid production from inflammatory cells. So local pH is reduced. More urate crystals are precipitated in the affected joint. Another action is releasing lysosomal enzyme which cause joint destruction. So colchicine will inhibit glycoprotein and glycoprotein mediated these events. Colchicine is available in tablet form also as well as in injection form also. It also inhibits release of chemotactic factors of the glycoproteins and of the glycoproteins. By binding to fibrillar protein, what is the name of protein? Tubulin. It inhibits granulocyte migration into the inflamed joint and thus interrupts the vicious cycle. So potent anti-inflammatory action we can notice with colchicine. More elaboration about the action of colchicine. Antimitotic action. It causes the metaphase arrest by binding to microtubules of mitotic spindle. It was tried for cancer chemotherapy but abandoned due to toxicity. Many toxicity are noticed with colchicine, but the limiting side effect is noticed diarrhea with colchicine, and it is quite cumbersome, bloody and watery diarrhea. Increases gut motility through neural mechanisms, so causing diarrhea. Pharmacokinetic and adverse effect of colchicine. It undergoes enterohepatic circulation. Which are the consequences of enterohepatic circulation that we know? Adverse effect, if we see nausea, vomiting, watery or bloody diarrhea and abdominal cramp. Systemic toxicity are very high with colchicine, like renal toxicity, CNS depression, intestinal bleeding, muscular paralysis, respiratory failure. Chronic therapy of colchicine lead to hemolytic manifestation like aplastic anemia, agranulocytosis, myopathy and alopecia or loss of hair. Now, what is the use of colchicine? We have already discussed treatment of acute attack of gout. We can start with 0.5 milligram 1 to 3 hourly with a total 3 doses in a day, but maximum dose is 6 milligram. If increase the dose, then there are more chances of cumbersome diarrhea, and diarrhea is one of the limiting factor or limiting adverse effect with the use of colchicine in acute attack of diarrhea. Maintenance dose is 0.5 to 1 milligram per day can be given. Prophylaxis 0.5 to 1 milligram per day. So that was about the colchicine in mainly in acute attack of gout. Now another agent for acute attack of gout are corticosteroids. Corticosteroids in case of gout given by two routes, local route and systemic route. So preferable local route here is intra-articular injection. So direct injection into the particular joint. But routinely it is not given, intra-articular injection is given in which cases? Refractory cases and those not tolerating NSAIDs or colchicine. So in case of acute attack, first of all we will give NSAIDs. If situation is, the condition is not controlled, then colchicine can also be given, and if patient doesn't respond at that time, intra-articular injection of corticosteroids also given. Systemic administration of corticosteroids. Prednisolone can be given 40 to 60 milligram in one day, followed by tapering doses over 1 to 2 weeks. In case of corticosteroids or steroids, we need to remember gradually increasing the dose and gradually decreasing the dose is required. Effective and produce relief nearly as rapid as colchicine. So regarding efficacy, if we'll see, corticosteroids and colchicine are equal in case of acute attack of gout. But it is reserved for patients with renal failure and history of peptic ulcer. These are the conditions in which NSAIDs are contraindicated, like in compromised renal function or renal failure and peptic ulcer, because they already lead to these conditions. And for another conditions, when colchicine and NSAIDs cannot be given. Chronic gout. So, two types of category we have seen, uricosuric agents and synthesis inhibitors. So, in uricosuric agents, first of all, we'll see about the probenecid. So, what is probenecid? Probenecid is one type of organic acid which is highly lipid soluble. Now, what is the mechanism action of probenecid, or how it acts as uricosuric agents? Means increase the urinary excretion of uric acid. So competitively blocks active transport of organic acids by organic anionic transporter for polypeptides at all sites in renal tubules. We are knowing the basolateral membrane, apical membrane, different subtypes of organic anionic transporters are also there. So it competitively blocks at all sites this active transport of organic acid. Transport of organic acid is bidirectional. In general pharmacology we have already learn. So what is the tendency of this transport? That is the secretion of xenobiotic or foreign substance or foreign acids and reabsorption of endogenous acid. So if we talk in relation with gout, uric acid is endogenous, in general if we talk, then uric acid is endogenous agent. So the physiological tendency of this transport is to reabsorb uric acid and to excrete penicillin, and not only penicillin but other acids also, which is given exogenously, or drugs. But when we give probenecid, what will happen? It will block the transport of this, active transport of this organic acid. So there is no reabsorption of uric acid. So uric acid remain in tubule. Ultimately there is excretion of uric acids. So that way it enhance the excretion of uric acid, or uricosuric action is there. If we talk in relation with penicillin, it's a drug, so secretion is will be there, but by blocking the transport, the secretion that will be inhibited. So penicillin will remain in circulation or plasma, so plasma concentration of penicillin increase. So half-life of penicillin also increase. So this is the reason why probenecid is combined with penicillin and ampicillin. We know the half-life of penicillin, that is just 30 minutes or half an hour. But when it is given with probenecid, we can increase the half-life and frequency of administration of penicillin. That is the therapeutic utility. So here we can remember the role of probenecid as uricosuric agent. It is neither analgesic nor anti-inflammatory, and that's why in acute attack of gout, we can't use this agent, because in acute attack there is the role of anti-inflammatory agent and analgesic agents. So here the same thing, apical membrane is there, tubule, circulation, basolateral membrane is there. These are the various types of organic acid transporters. So all these transporters or at all sites are blocked by probenecid. Agents given here: probenecid, benzbromeron, sulfenpyrazone. Interactions. Which are the interactions of probenecid? It inhibits urinary excretion of cephalosporin, sulfonamide, methotrexate and indomethacin by the same mechanism as penicillin. Inhibit biliary excretion of rifampin, pyrazinamide and ethambutol. Inhibit tubular secretion of nitrofurantoin. Salicylates block uricosuric action of probenecids by the same mechanism as probenecid block the transport. So these are the various drug interaction at the level of anionic transporter mainly. Pharmacokinetic half-life is 6 to 8 hours. Which are the adverse effects? Dyspepsia, rashes and other hypersensitivity phenomena. Uses chronic gout and hyperuricemia. Probenecid is also used to prolong penicillin or ampicillin action or increase the half-life. Second agent, sulfenpyrazone. It also inhibits tubular reabsorption of uric acid, though equally efficacious as probenecid, but gone out of use due to more gastric irritation and other systemic side effects. So we can remember in the same class, but it is not used as much as probenecid. Lesinurad, this is the new uricosuric drug approved recently by US FDA as a treatment option for hyperuricemia, either alone or in combination with xanthine oxidase inhibitors. Its mechanism action is similar to that of probenecid. Now, uric acid synthesis inhibitors. So, first agent is allopurinol. So, allopurinol is hypoxanthine analog. It inhibits the enzyme xanthine oxidase. What is the action of this xanthine oxidase? Conversion of hypoxanthine to xanthine and xanthine to uric acid. The major metabolite alloxanthine or oxypurin is a long-acting, half-life is 24 hours, and this metabolite is non-competitive inhibitors of this enzyme. So, further it will increase the duration of action of allopurinol. What is mechanism of action? During allopurinol administration, plasma concentration of uric acid is reduced and that of hypoxanthine and xanthine is increased. Since xanthine and hypoxanthine are more stable, have a higher renal clearance than that of uric acid, and each has its individual solubility, precipitation and crystallization in tissues, and urine does not occur. So, crystallization of these agents, hypoxanthine and xanthine, does not occur. But we know with uric acid crystallization occur or deposition occur. Because of raised level of xanthine and hypoxanthine, some feedback inhibition of de novo purine synthesis occur and reutilization of metabolically derived purine also occur. Which are the interactions of allopurinol? It inhibits the degradation of 6-mercaptopurine and azathioprine. Azathioprine, in previous class we have seen in rheumatoid arthritis, immunosuppression. It is converted into 6-mercaptopurine with the help of enzyme TPMT. So, allopurinol inhibit degradation of this 6-mercaptopurine and azathioprine. So, what will happen? Increase the plasma concentration of both these agents. So, chances of toxicity of these agents are also there in cases when there is low level, when the action is required to get potentiated. At that time also we can use concurrent administration of allopurinol. Probenecid given with allopurinol has complex interaction. While probenecid shortens half-life of alloxanthine, allopurinol prolongs half-life of probenecid. It also potentiates warfarin and theophylline action. How? By inhibiting the metabolism. Higher incidence of skin rashes when it is given with ampicillin. This is purine catabolism, conversion of hypoxanthine to xanthine, xanthine to uric acid. At both these steps, there is the role of enzyme xanthine oxidase, which is inhibited by allopurinol. Here, allantoin urinary excretion will be there. Urate oxidase is the enzyme, and the agent inhibit this is rasbericase. Adverse effect: hypersensitivity reaction, renal impairment, SJ syndrome or Stevens-Johnson syndrome, gastric irritation, headache, nausea, and dizziness. So, toxicity, if we see, it is also highly toxic agent. Precautions and contraindication: liberal fluid intake is advocated while allopurinol therapy. Hypersensitive patients, it is given with caution. During pregnancy and lactation, it is not given. Uses chronic gout, secondary hyperuricemia to potentiate 6-mercaptopurine or azathioprine, as we have discussed earlier. Now, caution, especially in case of gout, allopurinol as well as uricosuric should not be started during acute attack of gout. During the initial, why? because during the initial 1 to 2 months treatment with these agents, attack of acute gout are more common, probably due to fluctuating plasma urate levels, favoring intermittent solubilization and recrystallization in joints occur. The period should be covered by NSAID of colchicine, but these agents should not be given. Another agent is febuxostat, which is also xanthine oxidase inhibitor, but it is non-purine. Allopurinol was purine. Half-life of febuxostat is around 6 hours only. Adverse effect: liver damage, diarrhea, nausea, headache. And because of this liver damage, it is given only in patient intolerant to allopurinol. Otherwise, routine basis febuxostat is not given. Pegloticase, it is recombinant uricase, an enzyme, uricase, which is an enzyme which oxidizes uric acid to highly soluble allantoin that is easily excreted by kidney. But this agent is also associated with various toxicity, and that's why used in resistant cases only. So that's all about drug therapy of gout. In case of gout, if we see, first of all, grade toe is involved, or there is deposition of gouty tophi occur. If we see the drugs, they are classified based on status like acute attack of gout and chronic gout or secondary hyperuricemia. In case of acute attack, there is intense pain and inflammation is there, and because of that, anti-inflammatory analgesic agents are given like NSAIDs, corticosteroids and colchicine. Among these three agents, preferable agents are NSAIDs. What's about colchicine? In efficacy, colchicine and corticosteroids both are superior to NSAIDs. But because of toxicity like diarrhea and other toxicity in case of colchicine, it is not preferred, but previously it was preferred over other agents. Corticosteroids, when it is resistance with NSAIDs and colchicine, corticosteroids are given. Chronic cases, synthesis inhibitor and uricosuric agents are given. So, one exercise I will give you on Google Classroom that is related, the case is related to the gout. At last, we will discuss its very easy. Now, coming to the another topic, drug therapy of migraine. So, what is migraine? All of us are familiar with the term migraine till now. So, this migraine is a mysterious disorder characterized by pulsating headache or throbbing headache, usually restricted to one side initially, but later on it can be generalized, which comes in attacks lasting 4 to 48 hours and is often associated with nausea, vomiting, sensitivity to light and sound, flashes of light, vertigo, loose motions and other symptoms. So, not necessarily all the symptoms at a time occur in one person, but on individual basis, this type of symptoms can be present during attack of migraine or headache. Now, which are the type of migraine? You must be knowing about the aura. So, based on that, there are two types: migraine with aura, which is the classical migraine, in which headache is preceded by visual or other neurological symptoms. Another type is migraine without aura, and this migraine without aura is not classical, but it is very common migraine. So, in not all the patients or person, the migraine starts with aura. Majority of the cases, migraine occur without aura. Pathology, if you see, pulsatile dilatation of large cranial vessels is the immediate cause of pain and throbbing in nature. The pathogenic mechanisms are not well understood, but several hypotheses still present with migraine. So first is vascular theory. So what is vascular theory in case of migraine? The vascular theory holds that initial vasoconstriction or shunting of blood through carotid arteriovenous anastomosis produces cerebral ischemia and starts the attack. So we are knowing the reason of pulsating headache is vasodilation, but according to vascular theory, attack starts because of initial vasoconstriction or shunting of blood through carotid AV anastomosis and produces cerebral ischemia. Next theory, neurogenic theory. This theory considers it to be a spreading cortical depressions or cortical electrical activity is depressed, which is followed by vascular phenomenon. Some triggering event appears to produce neurogenic inflammation of affected blood vessel wall, which is amplified by retrograde transmission in the afferent nerves and release of mediators like serotonin, neurokinin, substance P, CGRP, that is calcitonin, gene-related peptide, and nitric oxide, etc. Perivascular edema occurs due to leakage of plasma from the inflamed cranial vessels, and pain nerve endings in the dura are activated by stretching. Changes in blood or urinary level of 5-HT or serotonin and its metabolites during migraine attack. Its precipitation by 5-HT releases and efficacy of drugs having actions in serotogenic system to prevent or to abort or to terminate migraine attacks suggests a pivotal role of serotonin or 5-HT in these disorders. So these are the reasons we believe that there is the role of strongly, or the migraine is strongly associated with some problem in 5-HT. Drug therapy of migraine has to be individualized, and this individualization based on severity and frequency of attacks, response of individual patients to drugs used earlier determine the choice, and the strategy mostly adopted is summarized in the box, that is depends on severity of migraine, like mild, moderate and severe. Now before coming to this drug therapy, first of all we'll see what is mild, what is moderate cases of migraine, and when we label the case as severe case of migraine. So what is mild case? The case is having fewer than one attack per month of throbbing but tolerable headache lasting up to 8 hours, which does not incapacitate the individual. So duration of attack, you can remember, that is up to 8 hours, and frequency of attack, that is less than one or at least one attack per month. And another associated symptoms, if we'll see, it does not incapacitate the individual. At that time, we label the case as mild case. Now, moderate case. When the throbbing headache is more intense, lasts for 6 to 24 hours, associated with nausea, vomiting and other features, and the patient is functionally impaired. One or more attacks occur per month. So it is more than or equal to 2 attacks per month, associated symptoms, nausea, vomiting, incapacitation, and the duration of attack is 6 to 24 hours. In case of severe attack, what is the frequency per month? 2 to 3 or more attacks per month, and duration of attack lasting 12 to 48 hours, associated symptoms vertigo, vomiting and others many symptoms, and the patient becomes incapacitated. So here analgesic and okay. Now we'll go to the individualization of drug therapy of migraine. So in mild cases, we have seen which case we can label as mild. So here major thing occur is pain. So we can give simple analgesics and NSAIDs or combinations. Combination of these simple analgesic and NSAIDs along with antiemetic agents. So antiemetics are optional here. If vomiting, nausea vomiting present, at that time we can prescribe along with these agents. Now here one word is there, that is simple analgesics or NSAIDs. So what do you mean by simple analgesics? So non-opioid or non-narcotic analgesics are known as simple analgesics. But here specially mentioned simple analgesics and NSAIDs. So what is the necessity to write down these two separately? Is NSAID alone is not sufficient? So you can remember here, paracetamol is the agent which is having very poor or no anti-inflammatory action. So it is considered as simple analgesics along with NSAIDs, but some books or some literature not classified paracetamol as NSAIDs, and that's why here specially they have mentioned. Moderate cases, NSAID combination with triptan, that is the specific agents for migraine, ergot alkaloids, which are the specific agents for migraine, plus antiemetic if vomiting is present. In majority of the cases, moderate cases, vomiting is associated. Specific agents, if the situation or attack is not controlled with NSAIDs alone or NSAID combination with other agents, at that time there is the need to give specific agents like triptans and ergot alkaloids. Severe cases, it is necessary to give triptan, either triptan or ergot alkaloid along with antiemetic agent, because in severe cases, majority of the cases or almost all cases present with vomiting. Plus prophylaxis for migraine is also given or prescribed in severe cases. So which are the factors which decide keep in this case prophylaxis is whether prophylactic agents are prescribed or not. So one of the factor that is frequency of attack per month. If it is more than 2 to 3 per month, then we need to prescribe prophylaxis. So in case of severe cases, in description, we know it is given the frequency of attack is more than 2 to 3 per month. Now which are the agents can be given for prophylaxis? Propranolol, this is the widely or most preferable agent for migraine prophylaxis. Other beta blockers can also be given like metoprolol, atenolol, but the agents having intrinsic sympathomimetic activity are not given like pindolol. They can aggravate the situation. Another class, tricyclic antidepressant. Among this, in this class, amitriptyline is widely used. Calcium channel blocker, flunarizine, which is the cerebroselective calcium channel blocker, is used. Then the agents anticonvulsant or used in epilepsy are sodium valproate or topiramate, that is GABA derivatives. So these are the agents given for prophylaxis. So in severe cases, specific agents are must along with antiemetic and prescription for prophylaxis. Now which are the simple analgesics? Paracetamol given, aspirin given repeated 4 to 6 hourly if they are needed and wait for the response. NSAIDs and their combination. Ibuprofen, the dose you are already familiar with because NSAIDs already covered in the class. Naproxen, diclofenac, mefenamic acid, indomethacin, either alone. These agents are given either alone or combined with which agents? Paracetamol. So paracetamol, we see it is considered as simple analgesic but not NSAID. So these NSAID can be combined with paracetamol also, codeine, diazepam, sedative, diphenhydramine, which is an antihistaminic, H1 antihistaminic agent, and another antihistaminic agents or caffeine for various purpose. Antiemetics, when vomiting or nausea is present. Gastric stasis occur during migraine which delays absorption of oral drug. So this is the problem associated with migraine is gastric stasis. In that situation, metoclopramide is given either 10 mg oral or intramuscular injection that will relieve nausea, vomiting and gastric stasis. Also, as you are knowing, it is gastrokinetic agent or prokinetic agent. When the patient has already vomited, it is better to give the antiemetic by injection. So if patient is unable to take orally or frequent vomiting is there, so at that time injection is preferable. Domperidone is another antiemetic given. Prochlorperazine, which is famously known as Stametil, antihistaminics, anticholinergic property also, chlorpromazine derivative. Diphenhydramine and promethazine exert sedative as well as antiemetic action. So when needed, these agents can also be given as antiemetic. Manifestation of mild, moderate, severe, already seen. Prophylactic regimen lasting 6 months or more are recommended. So in case of severe migraine or even in migraine, if frequency of attack is more, at that time we can prescribe prophylaxis. But these prophylaxis regimen should be for at least 6 months. And then we need to give trial. We have to tell patients to notice or to note down the recurrence of frequency of attack, and then we need to take decision to prescribe it again or not. Now specific anti-migraine drugs, which are they? Ergotamine, that is the most effective ergot alkaloid for migraine. It is given early in attack. Lower dose is generally sufficient and relief is often dramatic with this agent, ergotamine. When pain has become severe, large doses are needed and control may be achieved only after few hours. Route of administration, if we talk oral or SL or sublingual route is preferred. 1 mg is given at half an hour interval till relief is obtained, or a total of 6 milligram is given. So at UG level or undergraduate levels, it not necessary to remember each and every dose of the drug. But in some cases, it is necessary to remember the dose or regimen. So you will learn the same thing in prescription or criticism writing in practical. That's why I am mentioning here about the dose. Parenteral administration, though rapid in action, but is more hazardous, because what is ergotamine, what is ergot alkaloids, the receptor mediated actions, that is already covered in previous classes. So we are knowing which are the hazards or toxicity associated with rapid action. Mechanism action, ergotamine acts by constricting the dilated cranial vessels and or by specific constriction of carotid AV shunt channels, which is the reason for pulsating headache. dilatation. So we need to have the drugs having constricting action. Ergotamine and dihydroergotamine have been shown to reduce neurogenic inflammation and leakage of plasma in durameter that occurs due to retrograde stimulation of perivascular afferent nerves. Action appears to be mediated through partial agonism at 5-HT1D1B. It's not 1B1B. It's 1D1B receptors in and around the cranial vessels. So it is agonistic at this receptor, serotonin receptor. What is the type of this receptor? 5-HT1D1B, and it is agonist. Remember that it's not antagonist, but still it opposes the action. How? That we'll see. Dihydroergotamine, DHE, as effective as ergotamine and preferred for parenteral administration because injected dihydroergotamine is less hazardous. Current status: because of erratic oral absorption, frequent side effects, especially nausea, vomiting, muscle cramps, and availability of better agents. Which are the better alternatives? Triptans. These agents, that means alkaloids, ergot alkaloids, are rarely used now except for consideration of cost because they are cheap and when triptans fail. So we have no option at that time. This thing you can remember about ergot alkaloid is they are given for migraine in severe, mild to severe attack, specific agent, but they aggravate nausea, vomiting. So situation, if the patient present with already severe vomiting, at the time situation can worsen. Just opposite to that, this ergot alkaloid, triptans, can inhibit nausea, vomiting also. So the need for antiemetics is decreased along with triptans. So in exam, if question is asked about compare and contrast of ergot alkaloids and triptans as anti-migraine agents, at that time you need to present the points with showing similarity and contrast also. Ergot alkaloid have no prophylactic value. Why? Because regular is, it may produce dull background headache. It itself lead to headache. So attack may be precipitated or on discontinuation of this agent. Caffeine. In 1 mark or one liner, the question is asked why these agents are given with caffeine. 100 milligram taken with ergotamine enhances absorption from oral and rectal routes and adds to the cranial vasoconstricting action. So caffeine will enhance the action of ergot alkaloid, ergotamine specially. Many combination preparations are available of ergotamine, dihydroergotamine and caffeine. Now selective, actually it is not able to read properly. Selective 5-HT1D1B agonist, triptans. This is the novel class of anti-migraine drugs selectively activate 5-HT1D1B receptors and are called triptans. Currently the first line drugs for patients who fail to respond to analgesics because these drugs have been designed to act on the same subtype of 5-HT receptor. Pharmacodynamic differences are minor, like various agents are there, sumatriptan, rizatriptan, naratriptan, almotriptan. So pharmacodynamic difference is very minor among all these agents, but significant pharmacokinetic difference is there. Like sumatriptan having half-life is very short, so frequency of administration is more, so half-life is long with another agents. So absorption, some difference in absorption. So we can say pharmacodynamic difference is very less, but there is significant pharmacokinetic differences there. All other triptans have higher oral bioavailability than the prototype drug sumatriptan. So sumatriptan having low oral bioavailability, other triptans having high oral bioavailability. Fewer Headache recurrence in an attack are reported with naratriptan and frovatriptan due to their longer half-life, but they may be slower in affording initial pain relief. So, MCQ question, you can remember this. Two agents can produce headache. Sumatriptan, this is the prototype agent, prototype triptan. First selective 5-HT1D1B agonist activates the other subtypes of 5-HT1 receptors only at very high concentration. That's why we can say selective action. It does not interact with any other 5-HT receptors or serotonergic receptors or any other receptors like adrenergic receptor, dopaminergic, cholinergic or GABA receptors. So, these triptans are very selective, or sumatriptan is very selective in this agonist, 5-HT1D1B agonist. Administered at the onset of an attack of migraine, as effective and better tolerated than ergotamine. So, first difference or superiority of sumatriptan or triptans over ergotamine. About 3/4 patient obtain complete or significant relief within 2 to 3 hours. That is the advantage. Recurrence of headache within 24 hours has been noted in 20 to 40% patient due to short half-life. Distinct advantage is that it tends to suppress nausea and vomiting of migraine, while ergotamine accentuates these symptoms, as we have already discussed. Mechanism action, anti-migraine activity of sumatriptan has been ascribed to 5-HT1B1D receptor-mediated constriction of dilated cranial blood vessels, especially the arteriovenous shunts in carotid artery, which expresses the receptors. You find there is similarity in mechanism action of ergotalkaloid or ergotamine as well as triptan. Dilatation of these shunt vessels during migraine attack is believed to divert blood flow away from brain parenchyma, consistent with the fact that the receptors are presynaptic autoreceptors. Sumatriptan can reduce 5-HT release at these blood vessels. This is the reason how it reduces the 5-HT release. Because if we'll see the type of this receptor, 5-HT1D1B, that is presynaptic and autoreceptors. So, by activating this receptor or by agonistic action, sumatriptan can reduce 5-HT release because it is release inhibitory type of autoreceptor, presynaptic autoreceptor. It may inhibit inflammatory neuropeptide release around the affected vessels as well as extravasation of plasma proteins across dural vessels. Like ergotamine, the triptans have been found to suppress neurogenic inflammation of cranial vessels. The use of sumatriptan or other triptans should be restricted to treatment of acute attack of moderate to severe migraine, not responding to analgesics or their combination. So, as prescriber, you need to remember in each and every case of migraine, these agents need not to prescribe, but they should be reserved for moderate migraine or severe migraine, and in this case also if the control is not present with either NSAIDs or combinations of simple analgesics, NSAIDs, antiemetics, etc. Pharmacokinetic, sumatriptan is absorbed rapidly and completely after subcutaneous injection. Remember that, after subcutaneous injection. But oral bioavailability is only 15%. Absorption is faster after intranasal spray, but with same bioavailability. So absorption is faster with intranasal spray, but bioavailability is same. So we want the higher bioavailability. Okay. So this route is like optional, we can say. It is the only triptan available for nasal and parenteral administration. So this is the important. If nasal route is not much important, but parenteral administration is important. And sumatriptan is the only agent for parenteral administration. Elimination half-life is 2 hours only, that we have discussed. Side effects: tightness in chest, head, feeling of heart and limbs, paresthesia, dizziness, weakness are short-lasting and dose-related. More common after subcutaneous injection, and subcutaneous injection is painful also. Now, various severe side effect is present with sumatriptan, like bradycardia, coronary vasospasm, risk of myocardial infarction. These are the serious but rare adverse effects. Sudden deaths, seizures and hypersensitivity reactions are rare. Contraindication similar to that of various CVS conditions like ischemic heart disease, hypertension, epilepsy, hepatic and renal impairment and pregnancy are contraindications. Patient should be cautioned not to drive because of action on CNS or brain level. Sumatriptan and ergotamine should not be administered within 24 hours of each other, that we have discussed already. Interaction with 5-HT reuptake inhibitors, MAO inhibitors and lithium has been reported. Dose 50 to 100 mg oral at the onset of migraine attack may be repeated once within 24 hours if required. It is the only triptan available for parenteral use. Again, we are familiar with this fact. 6 mg subcutaneous may be given to patient who cannot take the drug orally or in whom the pain develops very rapidly. After injection, it acts in 10 to 20 minutes and is more consistently effective. Alternatively, for rapid action and in patients who vomit out the oral tablet, 25 mg nasal spray can be used. It may be repeated once after 2 hours. Now, here there is the role of nasal spray. We have seen nasal spray absorption is faster, but bioavailability is same as oral. But in case of vomiting, patient unable to take oral, at that time nasal spray can be given. Side effects also associated with the use of nasal spray. Another agent, rizatriptan, which is the congener, more potent, higher oral bioavailability and faster onset of action. 5 to 10 mg repeat once after 2 hours if required. Another congener are naratriptan, zolmitriptan, almotriptan, frovatriptan, elatriptan. They are used in another countries, not available in India's. The various features are given in this table. You can remember about triptans pharmacodynamically there is no difference, but pharmacokinetically difference. This is the prototype agent, sumatriptan. See, the bioavailability is very less, 15% as compared to other congener. And another thing you can notice here is half-life. That is just 2 hours, around 2 hours. Oral dose, if we'll see, initial or later on, very high dose of sumatriptan is required, 1500 initial and maximum 200 as compared to other agents, as we know, because of low oral bioavailability. So these striking features you can remember about the various triptans. Now, prophylaxis of migraine. The criteria we have already seen. Regarding frequency of attack, when 2 to 3 or more attacks occur per month, when attacks are disabling despite treatment, in patients with contraindications for triptan and ergotamine. Diverse classes of drug are used, but none is effective in all cases. None abolishes the attack totally. So at that time, it is necessary to give prophylaxis of migraine. All the point you need to remember. The most important, that is the frequency of migraine attack, more than 2 to 3 attacks per month. And here it is very important to avoid the precipitating factor. In case of migraine, if we'll see some triggering, we can say, factors, that is overcrowding or tiredness or anxiety, stress, some psychological problems, eating of some food, like pickle or chocolates, or in case of female, some hormonal factors. So the factors, these precipitating factors can vary with individual agents. So it's very necessary or important to avoid this precipitating factor after identification. First of all, you need to identify the precipitating factors, and thereby you can advise the patient to avoid it. Beta-adrenergic blockers, most commonly prescribed agent is propranolol, which is non-selective agents. Another non-selective agent, timolol, can be given. Selective, that means selective beta-1 or cardioselective beta blockers. Which are the agents? Metoprolol and atenolol can also be given. But the most preferable agents is propranolol only. Pindolol and other agents having intrinsic sympathomimetic action, never given. This is MCQ question, we can say. Tricyclic antidepressant, many can be given like amitriptyline. The reason behind using antidepressant is depression can be the precipitating factors. So by giving antidepressant, it can inhibit or prevent the attack of migraine. Calcium channel blockers, verapamil can be given. Flunarizine is preferable because it's having cerebroselective calcium channel blocking action, and it is claimed to be as effective as propranolol. We have seen the first choice agent is propranolol only, but flunarizine is also as effective as propranolol. The mechanism probable, that is reducing intracellular calcium overload due to brain hypoxia and other causes. Anticonvulsant, valproic acid, gabapentin have some prophylactic effect in migraine. Topiramate recently been approved. You can just remember which are the anticonvulsant can be used as prophylactics because they act as CNS level. CGRP antagonist, calcitonin gene related peptide antagonist, a fully human monoclonal antibody. The name of against this CGRP, the name is Erenumab. 5-HT antagonist, methisergid and cyproheptadine. They are serotonergic blockers but associated with very high toxicity, and that's why they are not preferable. But a short note is asked, or you need to remember in general also, these are the agents can be given as or can be prescribed as prophylaxis. The first choice agent is propranolol. Now this case I will post in Google Classroom, that is about the gout. Very brief, I'll cover it. 52-year-old woman presented with intense pain, warmth and redness in the first toe on her left foot. Examination of fluid withdrawn from the inflamed joint revealed crystals of uric acid. So from the case, it is very obvious. There is mentioning of uric acid. That means it is the case of gout. And first toe involved. That is also the striking feature of gout. The questions are, which are the agents can be given for this acute attack, and which agent would you prefer for this agent? Why? So we have already seen for acute attack, NSAIDs can be given, colchicine can be given, and corticosteroids can be given, but we preferred NSAIDs. You can write down colchicine also, because efficacy of colchicine and corticosteroids high, but because of these side effects, these agents are not preferable. You can mention this. So these are the basically high doses of colchicine is associated with which conditions? Behavioral changes, psychosis, high blood pressure, rash, severe diarrhea, sudden GI bleeding, that is associated with corticosteroid and colchicine, and that's why NSAIDs are preferable. Case 2 is the same or extension of this, but over the next 7 months. That means chronic case. The patient has 2 more attacks of acute gout. Her serum concentration of uric acid was elevated. the decision was made to put her on chronic drug therapy to try to prevent subsequent attacks. Which of the following drugs could be used to decrease this woman's rate of production of uric acid? Production, that means synthesis of uric acid. So which agent is there? Colchicine not associated, aspirin, NSAID, hydroxychloroquine not used even in gout, probenecid, uricosuric agents. So what is the synthesis inhibitor? Allopurinol. So your answer is allopurinol. So it will take just 2 minutes to reply and then put your attendance.